Hey, I'm Gabe, and if you're watching this video, it's likely that you've come from os.gabezito.com, and if you haven't, I'll quickly explain what that is. It's my personal website which acts as a portfolio of my life and doubles down as a puzzle game which you can play on there as well. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through the main game from start to the finish, covering all of the puzzles and logic and some of the lore along the way. But I'll leave most of the story and other Easter eggs for you to find yourself. Also, by the time you watch this video, the lore might have changed slightly, with new features being added now and again. But everything in this video should still make sense. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So arriving on os.gabezito.com for the first time, you see this page which just explains what this website is about. So it's a reflection of my life, both professional and personal. And I built this website because places like social media don't really reflect who I really am, beyond the surface at least. And I wanted to build a website that did just that, in an artistic way as well. So if we click on the game info tab, we have the few sort of rules of the game. The first is that the entire game is meant to be played within GabeOS, so just this website, and so you don't need to open up any other tabs or use any other tools. Second of all, the connection profile, which you'll see in a second, has nothing to do with the game because that's where my CV is. I initially built this website for employees to see my projects, and I ended up on a big tangent which ended up with the creation of this website. And if you're ever stuck, you can ask Milo for help, which if you've come from the website, you've probably met him already, and that's probably how you found this video. So if we click play, we see the initial cutscenes. The first scene is me, that's supposed to be me, at an airport saying, "Mom, I need you to confirm a request on my laptop before I'm off grid." And then minutes later, the plane departs. And the third cutscene is my mum, supposedly, saying or thinking that he never sent the password. So Gabe's mum decides to put her detective hat on. And it's kind of subtle, but the entire idea is that she is the one who's looking at this laptop, which is the position that you're in right now, and you're trying to confirm this request that Gabe is talking about. So we're playing in the perspective of Gabe's mother, and this is what you see. So the connection profile is something which you don't really need to touch. Gabe is a profile which you can try and enter some passwords, but they're probably going to be wrong. That's not what you're supposed to do. And eventually you decide to click on guess, because there's only a few things to click on. And after you do that, you get to a desktop page, which seemingly looks just like a Mac. It was heavily inspired by a Mac. And we'll go to the first clue, which is easily seen here with saying Gabe's account. And so we see the hint, which is a mixture of dashes, commas, and O's. And after some more digging by opening up literally everything there is here, you end up on the quotes page. And there's only really one place which you can find it, which is here. And if you notice how this works, you can toggle each of these categories on and off. And there's either a strike through them, or it's just open. And the more of these that you click, the longer the list of these quotes are. So every single category that's open adds to the list of notes that are shown. So theoretically, if you open more lists or more categories, you should see a longer list. But if you match exactly what this pattern is, so a dash for all, then fiction is open, then 3 more dashes, and then 2 more O's, which means that they're open, you see that you get something slightly different. And it's a quote that says, "One man's trash is another man's treasure," by Hector Urquhart. And that's the very first part of your clue, where you might be thinking, something is going on here which is a bit fishy. And after you read this, you might think of the trash page, because there's a trash folder right here, which is exactly what you should be clicking on. So if you find trash or treasure.txt, which matches this quite a lot, it actually doubles back to tell you or confirm or help confirm that you're actually going in the right direction. And in this note, it says, "Been thinking about that quote from Hector Urquhart, 'One man's trash is another man's treasure.' Funny how that works with files too. Junk data, lost messages, broken images." And a common theme within this entire website is that every new paragraph can separate what is lore and what is a clue. And in this case, the second paragraph is what the clue is. So it says music and photos, two of life's greatest creations, right? So let's open those two things up. Music and photos. And let's move these things as well so we can get everything on the screen. Sometimes the useless is only useless if you don't see it twice. An image is worth 1,000 words, or maybe a few hidden words if you look hard enough. Anyways, lol, moving on. And this might be harder to spot, but it sets the tone for the rest of the website and the rest of the game. Sometimes the useless is only useless if you don't see it twice, and what I'm trying to get you to do here is to see which pictures are actually in both the music and photos apps. And you can see that there's only one, which is this one here, which is of me on the Seven Sisters, which appears as the album cover of the song, as well as appearing in the Photos app. And if you match that with sometimes the useless is only useless if you don't see it twice, then maybe this is something that's useful because you see it twice. And an image is worth 1,000 words, or maybe a few hidden words if you look hard enough. So if we open up this page and we look at what the description says, it says, "Look at you looking at me, looking hard at the cliffs." Once again, looking hard and looking hard at the cliffs. That's not put there by accident, man. It's something which you should be looking at. And if you zoom in to where I'm looking at on the cliffs, you can sort of see, if you follow my cursor, that I'm looking towards these cliffs here. And if you zoom in a lot, to the maximum amount you can vaguely see something here which says Secret 1, alone but not lonely. And this is the first secret, or the first checkpoint for the puzzle. And you actually input it here, where you say, "Can I tell you a secret to Milo?" I'm not going to get too much into who Milo is, but he's a chatbot which explains what GabeOS is, and is also where you can input secrets, which is a key part in progressing the story. So if we enter the secret here, alone but not lonely, we get an automated message from Gabe. And if you see, all of these messages are starred. If I just do some gibberish, it's not starred. So starred messages are important and they'll be saved. And they're also something that tells you that you're on the right track. So let's read this. An automated message from Gabe via Milo. "Hey, so you forgot your password, huh? As expected, some things do never change. Well, this message is to let you know you're on the right track. Someone once told me life moves pretty fast and I should stop every once in a while or I'd miss it. But honestly, I think life's moving too slow, and if only I could make life move just a little faster." Anyway, I won't bother you with this rant. If you want to read more, I'm sure you know where to go. I hope life's treating you well, you goldfish. A younger Gabe. And the clue here should be pointing you in the second paragraph towards something to do with rants. And if you dig a bit deeper, let's close these tabs first. You can actually find it in the Notes app over here under rants. And by the time you watch this, there might be more things here, but there will be one that says fast forward. And if we click on it, it has something to do with the message that younger Gabe was talking about here. And this is really what the next clue is. And let's read it. It says, "I wish I could skip ahead like 12 days, just once. It would unlock so many things for me. Like literally, I'm going to come back to this message in 12 days' time, and I'm sure it'll be different. It's not that I hate the present, it's just some days feel like placeholders." And then it goes on to explain a bit of lore. But once again, you see here that the first paragraph is the clue, and the second paragraph is lore. And then I repeat again, 12 days, not forever, just enough to get past the noise, past the doubts, past the parts I already know won't change. And the more you read this, the more you get an idea of who Gabe is. In fact, I don't know why I'm saying Gabe, it's who I am. And this is honestly like how I write in my notes apps. So if you read through all these notes and everything you see on this website, you get a pretty good idea of who the stranger is. And anyways, this is kind of clear, I think. You want to fast forward exactly 12 days. Maybe. Will that change anything? Not sure, but that's the first idea that you should have. And how do you change the system clock? Well, you can go to day and time, turn off the automatically set time and go forward 12 days, which in this case would be August the 22nd. And if we look at the date now, we can also see that the note automatically changes. So we go back a day, it's fast forward. But when we go exactly 12 days ahead, you see 23rd is fast forward, we get to this page that says fast forwarded. Now that change in the Notes app should be a very big clue for you. And this is really the confirmation that you got the clue sorted. And let's read it. And would you look at me, it's indeed different. Well, not everything. I'm more energetic now than I was when I wrote the last note, but the doubts are still there. Da 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 da. Some lore that I'm not going to get into. And also, you want to hear a secret? Now, whenever you see the word secret, it should point you towards the secret in Milo. That's not done by accident, that's done on purpose. My music taste has changed too in literally 12 days. My top artists aren't in the right order anymore. Haha. I guess I'm not as loyal to them as I thought. And what this points out, or should lead you to, is something to do with my top artists. And if you play around with the time, setting it back to automatic, or setting it back to 22nd, it doesn't actually change. And so you're not supposed to see a change in the artists if you try that. But what you're supposed to make out of that note, or that clue, is that you want to switch up the order of these artists. And if you switch up the order of these artists, you actually get an anagram if you take the very first letters. And you end up with the word Charlie. Now, you might think that that just came out of nowhere, but at this point you should have dug a lot deeper into the rest of the lore, and Charlie is actually Gabe's father. I didn't know him too well, but he was gentle and kind. He was there in the earliest version of GabeOS, before Mila, before me, back when this was all just a passion project between a father and a son. After I was built, Charlie only ever touched one thing on this laptop, a password. Said Gabe was too forgetful to remember anything that didn't stare him in the face, so he picked something that would always be right there. The GabeOS version number, x.xx.xx. It sounds like... never mind. It updates with every release. They both thought that was funny. A secret hiding in plain sight. And I do love that. I love secrets hiding in plain sight. It's strange digging that up again. Makes me feel nostalgic. So once again, the second paragraph is a clue. It's not really a clue, it's kind of obvious description of what the password is. And the very first paragraph is about some lore about who who Gabe's dad is. And this is really the password. It says x.xx.xx. And at this point, you can log out of Gabe's device, the guest device, and go into Gabe. And as you see here at the very bottom, the password is indeed 3.10.11. And that gets you into Gabe's account. And that's where part 2 of this entire rest of the puzzle is. So you might notice a few extra apps here. There's a map, there's GFA, recordings. I'm not sure if that was actually in guest as well. But there's a mail app and a messages app. So there's quite a little more for you to work with. And if we open up the passwords tab again, we can see that the second row is corrupted. And Milo actually talks about this in the very first message. He says, "Can you remind Gabe to log into his account to fix the corrupted files? It's causing some problems and I can't seem to fix them. Between you and me, I think he did it on purpose." And this is something which you weren't able to do in the guest account, which is if you go on uncorrupt files, you can click on this button which says uncorrupt all files, and suddenly the passwords are not corrupted anymore. And you see the next clue which you're supposed to use, which is the GFA declaration. And the hint is your birth date. And you could honestly try and find this by just manually going through the entire calendar. I would not suggest you do that. And instead you can look at something new, which is the mail app. And something here shows you happy 21st birthday. And this is a message sent from David Zito, who is Gabe's grandpa. And he says, "Happy 21st. I can hardly believe you've already grown up this much. I hope this year Charlie's actually giving you a proper celebration. So from this you can infer that David is Charlie's dad, who is Gabe's granddad. And he says, I know he always likes to do a 2-in-1 with New Year's and your birthday. Wishing you health, luck, and all the best with your tech adventures. And if you see when this was sent, it was on the 2nd of January, 2025. So, knowing that this is the date of Gabe's 21st birthday, you can actually track back 21 years to find, whoops, wrong thing, to find my birth date. So if we go to January of 2025, you see that there isn't anything much here, nothing on the 2nd, but if we track back 21 years to 2004, we see that on the 2nd, there's one little note, and it says Gabe's birthday. Remember, Gabe, the sum of the parts is greater than the whole, and points the way forward. But its secret only stands when the world is turned on its head. So there's two parts of this clue. The first part is obviously the sum of the parts, and the second part is when the world is turned on its head. And that second part means to flip or turn it upside down. So the first idea you might have was to add 2 to 1 to 2004, and that gives you 2007. And if you flip that around, you get something that looks like lose. So let's see, 2007. If you flip this around, it looks like lose, right? But not quite, because it should be a 5 instead of 2. That's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to actually manually add 1 plus 2 plus 2004. And if you do that, you actually get something else in blue. You get the word bless, because you have an 8, then an L, and an ESS. And that is a very clear clue for what the next secret is. Because, once again, in the calendar, there's a word secret, and that isn't put there accidentally. It's there for Milo. So if we enter the secret bless, we see that it gets saved, which means that it was correct. And Milo says, Project Bless, a core part of GabeOS. The idea was simple. Your senses make up who you are. So to know it was really you at the keyboard, it only had to know the you behind them. All that data stayed encrypted, local, locked your identity in a way that was supposedly unforgeable. A big part of me was built off Bless. That's how I know you're not Gabe, but someone else. But someone close. And without getting into too much detail, Bless is a huge part of the lore and the game, which you should try and figure out yourself. It's essentially what GabeOS is built upon, and is Gabe's entire idea in this indie startup, which is a piece of AI that knows exactly who you are. Very scary, right? And what I mean by this is that, and I hope I don't go on a big tangent here, how your mouse moves, what you click, that is what determines who you are. And imagine if your computer knew exactly that. Then you wouldn't need any Face ID, any fingerprint. You would just need to be yourself, and somehow your computer would know it's you. And that's somehow the safest security that I think anyone could ever have. But I'll leave the rest of the mystery to you. Anyways, the next paragraph reads, the Ministry of Digital Securities took notice. Bless was what sealed their partnership with Gabe. And now with GabeOS v4 on the horizon, I've heard something big is coming, some kind of update to Bless, though I don't know the details yet. If you're curious, Gabe's early research on Bless is still buried somewhere, back when it was just a nascent idea. And this is a lot more subtle because this is nearing the end of the puzzle, but you're supposed to look at the research on Bless. And you can find that by going into the Research tab and clicking on Project Bless. And this is the paragraph which is the final clue, and it's very cryptic. Let's read it together. It says, Bless will be the core of GFA. It stands for Behavioral Logging and Encryption Security Suite. Its premise is not just about logging behavior, it's about understanding identity beyond keys, fingerprints, or passphrases, behavioral rhythms, cursor drift, micro pauses between keystrokes. But even more, Bless will understand our senses that make us who we are. And once again, the new paragraph here should signify that this is what you should be looking at. And it says, what we've touched, tasted, smelt, seen, and had. And those are the 5 senses. Each sense on its own is noise, but together they form a pattern. a person. And that part's quite important. Together they form a pattern, a person. Security isn't about asking what do you know anymore, it's about recognizing you entirely. If this works, the system won't need a password, it will need a declaration. And this might take a bit of thinking to figure out and a bit more digging around the rest of the website. But you'll eventually find these notes which have something to do with senses, like Gabe's touch typing test, which is clearly something that's a clue. And for the final part of the game, you're supposed to find all 5 of these senses, which should give you a part of a final clue, and then put them all together to get the final answer. It's quite neat. So let's start with this Gabe's touch typing test first. And we can open a notepad, which you can use to just write whatever notes you have, just so that you know what's going on throughout the entire game. So a pattern learned now turned askew, familiar paths now mirror through. What once was left now hides on the right, reverse your hands and retype by sight. This would take some thinking, but what you're supposed to do is take the keyboard and just flip it on the middle axes. So this is sort of assuming you have a QWERTY keyboard, but between the T and the Y, if you draw a line straight down, that's essentially where you mirror it. So the letter O, which is the second from the right, will actually be the second on the left, which is the letter W. Then we have the F, which is the letter H, L, which is an A, Y, which is a T, and I'm going to write out the rest of the message so that you don't really have to listen to me. Okay, I'm pretty sure this is what the code says. I'm sort of remembering it from memory rather than decoding it. But if you do that mirroring and you type out the clue, you should get something like this. What once was left is now redone. The code revealed is 911. And that is the first part of your clue. 911. So we go touch and we say 911. We might be thinking, okay, we're supposed to be finding a 3-number combination in each of these different senses, and that is exactly what you're supposed to be doing. So let's move on to tasted, and this is one of the coolest ones, I think, which requires a bunch of different parts of this game. We're going to pull up a few things to start with. The map, which is over here. We're going to put this on the top left. Then we're going to pull up the favorite food spots. And then we're going to pull up the calendar. And the first idea you should get when you see these locations and the restaurant names is to put these on the map. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So bear with me as I do this very, very quickly. Okay, and this is what it looks like if you map out all of the different restaurants. And you might be thinking, what on earth is this? I haven't used the line tool as well. And that is where the calendar comes in. If you fiddle around with this calendar and go back to the year that we're in, which is 2025. Oh, whoops. We can find a lot of these different restaurants starting around here. And what you're supposed to realize is that these restaurants map out the order in which these lines are supposed to be drawn in. So the first one is Penne Express, which is over here in the top left, 50.5944.68. 50.59, it's this one up here. And the second one is Rocks and Sushi, 52.18, 44.01. And if we draw a line between these two, we get something that looks like this. Now, if we keep moving forward, we see Brunch at Gallo, and this is at 50.98, which is this one right here. So we can draw another line going here. Nasi Goreng is this one here. No Some Tapas Bar is all the way down here. Dinner at Bat Iron is 53.38, so it's this one up here. And After we join all of these up, I've just skipped through the rest of them, we see something that looks quite goofy. It's like, I still don't really know what this is. Don't really expect you to know what this is, but if I had to ask you, what three numbers actually is this? Especially, what is this number on the left? There really is only one which it can be, which is the number 3. And to help you out, we can actually erase these lines here, and we can see the numbers 311. That's quite hard if you didn't know that you were searching for 3 numbers, but it's quite easy to find if you know what you're looking for. So we can do the next one, which is taste, and put in 311. And that's the end of that clue. So let's open up the third one, which is, let's remember what this is. It is what we've smelt. This one's quite easy, it's quite nice. Back in our notes app, we have something that says Gabe's top 6 scents. Now, you might be trying to figure out which one of these it is, and how you figure out which one is Gabe's favorite scent is actually from the Photos app. There's one image here, which you might see already, called perfumemaking.png. And it says, when Laura and I made our signature perfumes. Laura, you'll figure out, is someone who is in Gabe's life and is part of the lore. And if you read the notes, sorry, not the notes, but the title of the perfume, you can see it says Baby Breath 212. And that is Gabe's favorite perfume. And we can put that in here and say 212. The fourth one is going to be, let me close this. It's going to be what we see. And where you find that is this thing, which is quite cryptic, that says my first eye test. But when you open it, it's quite clear that this is some sort of weird clue that you're supposed to be looking at. So let's close these pages. So let's start on the first image. You might think that these images don't go, or they do go side by side, but in fact they're supposed to overlap in places. If you notice this blue bit here, it looks awfully similar to this one here, and if you actually overlap it, it actually fits. And if we go through each one, playing around with exactly where they go, I think this goes somewhere here. I'm actually not too sure. This is sort of done by memory, and it's probably a lot more difficult for you. So bear with me here. Yep, that looks sort of right. 6 goes up here. Whoops. Let's put this over here. 7, which is just this part here. 8, which goes here, I think. Yeah, it matches up with the 5. And then finally 9, which goes at the top. And if you had to try and pick out 3 numbers here, you can see the numbers 1, quite clear, a 5, and a 6. And that is what you're supposed to be looking for, the numbers 1, 5, 6. And if you're confused by what the order of those overlaps were, it's just 1 meaning layer 1, and then 9 being layer 9. So it has to be in that order, or else the black parts actually overlap, and you don't get to see the 3 numbers. So with that said, what was the code? 156. Yes, okay, site is 156. So we're nearly done. The very last clue is one called, not called, it's the one which is what we hear. Let me pull that up. So it says what we've heard. And for this, you go into recordings, and you can see something called Gabe's melody. Now, if you know what a melody is, the melody is like the top notes of a song. And if we play it, we can hear this. Or we don't hear anything because the volume here is down. Alright, let's hear that again. So with that melody, Knowing that you're supposed to be finding 3 numbers, you can actually split up the amount of notes that I'm playing between each double wood like knock. I really botched that. But essentially, every time you hear a sound, count the notes in between those. Let me play it again. And you should get 135. And we're gonna play it one more time. So. And with that, you get the final. Heard is bad. Let me say sound. We get the final numbers, which is 135. So the entire code is 911311212156135. And you might think, what on earth is that? That is just random. It's seemingly very random. And you might be correct in thinking that. This requires just a little bit of understanding codes and what this number could represent. But this number here is actually a code. I'm not sure what it's actually called, but it's where each letter or 2 letters represents a letter in the alphabet. And this is sort of a bit mean if you don't know that you're looking for this. So I might add a little decode or another message to hint what this random string of numbers even means. But if you decode this into where the letter A is the number 1 and the letter Z is the number 26, we actually get a code. So the number 9 is 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. The 11 is either a 1 or an 11. It's actually, if you dig deeper, the letter A. Then you have number 13, which is am. Then the number 1. And then 2 number 12s, which are both L's. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L. And then all of number 13 is an M. And then finally an E. And this is actually the code, the final declaration. And it makes sense. It's a person. I am all of me, sort of. Because, well, the logic here, or what I was trying to get the player to think, or get you to think, is that all of these senses and everything that is being tracked here in this behavioral logging and encryption security suite makes up exactly who you are. So you aren't just you are everything that makes up who you are. And there are some parallels with that and some philosophical idea of Theseus-ship. We're not going to get into that. But anyways, if you put it in to Gabe factor authentication, the code I am all of me, you can see that the confirm and deny buttons actually get some color. And clicking any of these buttons ends the game and takes you to the final cutscene. Now you get 2 different endings depending on which one you click. And I'm not going to tell you which one you should click or which one you shouldn't click. That's up to you. There's a big moral choice to be made in this game. And there's a lot of other hidden Easter eggs and hopefully side missions for you to complete, but I haven't implemented those yet. But that's it from me, taking you from the very start of the game to the very final decision that you can make. And I hope the logic made sense. If you're still stuck anywhere, or if there are any bugs, please leave a comment below. And I hope you found the website fun. If you clicked on this video without actually ever being on my website, give it a visit. There's a lot to explore, and I'm super proud of it. So anyways, that's me done. This is a super long video. I hope I can edit it down. Bye!